69 B.C. Egypt is the richest country in the world. Alexandria is the largest city, the largest library, the largest port. And in the same year, in the royal palace, Pharaoh Ptolemy XII had a daughter. She was named Cleopatra. 7th in a row. No one really expected that this particular girl would go down in history forever.
In short, I am the Queen of Egypt. I speak 9 languages, command armies, manage the largest economy in the Mediterranean, negotiate with Rome, and at the same time deal with chemistry. Real chemistry. And one day, I closed the evil wasps in a hollowed-out pumpkin and used them for personal purposes. Don't ask. Although, no, ask. That's why you're here.
This is a story about a woman who has been portrayed either as a mindless seductress or a tragic victim for 2,000 years in a row. Neither one nor the other is true. This is a story about perhaps the most dangerous mind of the ancient world. And we'll start with childhood.
My childhood was specific. The Pope is Pharaoh Ptolemy XII, nicknamed Avlet. It means flutist, literally. The main achievement of the ruler of a huge country is playing the flute. Mom died early. Brothers and sisters from diapers sharpened knives on each other, figuratively, and sometimes literally. The Egyptian court is not a family. This is a chess game where the pieces regularly destroy each other.
While the other children of the royal court were learning to weave intrigues and smile at the right people, little Cleopatra did something else. She read. We'll drink everything in a row. The Alexandria Library at that time was the largest book collection in the world. Hundreds of thousands of scrolls on medicine, philosophy, mathematics, history, astronomy. Cleopatra, apparently, wanted to read them all.
The teachers got tired of me. One of them once told Dad that I was asking too many questions. Dad fired him. Because, that's right, why do I need a teacher who can't answer my questions? By the age of 12, I spoke Greek, Egyptian, and Latin. Aramaic, Hebrew, Ethiopian, and 3 more were added to the 14. A total of 9 languages. I was the only ruler from the Ptolemaic dynasty, in 300 years, who even bothered to learn Egyptian. My ancestors ruled Egypt without knowing the language of the country. This is real arrogance.
Knowledge of languages was not just an academic hobby. It was an instrument of power. When Cleopatra spoke to the Ethiopian ambassador in his native language, the ambassador literally died. When she switched to Aramaic with Syrian traders, they lost the thread of negotiations from surprise. The translator is always an intermediary, a filter that softens something, misses something, sometimes intentionally. Cleopatra removed all the mediators.
Language is not politeness. It's a weapon. When I spoke to a person in his language, I saw his reaction directly, without delay. I heard the intonation, the hitch, the real meaning behind the words. Translators can't be trusted. They always soften something. And I don't like it when they soften it. Especially when it comes to money, territories, or war.
In addition to languages, Cleopatra studied mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and, what is especially important for the future, pharmacology. And not in theory. She did experiments, but more on that later. In 51 B.C., Ptolemy XII, the Pope with the flute, died. By will, the power passed to Cleopatra and her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII. Joint management. Officially, equal co-rulers. In practice, Cleopatra ruled, and her brother wore a crown and interfered. She held Egypt for 3 years. Then everything went wrong.
My brother was a 10-year-old boy, but he had advisors. Adult men who decided that it was inconvenient to manage the queen in Egypt, that it's harder to negotiate with a woman than with a child. And they organized a coup. I was kicked out of Alexandria, from my country, officially, with security, under escort. I stood at the gate of the palace, looked at the stars over the desert and thought, good, let's see who survives whom.
Most people in her place would panic. Cleopatra gathered a small army on the Syrian border and began to wait. Wait for the right moment. And the moment did not keep itself waiting. Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria. Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BC to pursue his political enemy, Pompey, who was killed right on the Egyptian coast before his arrival. Caesar found himself in a foreign country with a small army, in a situation of civil war between two co-rulers. He occupied the palace and waited for the development of events. And then Cleopatra came to him. More precisely, it was delivered.
The problem was simple. My brother controlled all the entrances to the palace. If I had tried to enter openly, I would have been arrested right on the doorstep. Another way was needed. My servant wrapped me in a carpet. According to other versions, in a bag of laundry, but the carpet sounds better, so let it be a carpet, and delivered it directly to Caesar's chambers. The servant put the bundle on the floor, the carpet turned around, and I got up, a little crumpled, absolutely unperturbed. I looked at Caesar. Caesar looked at me.
I didn't expect this. I've seen a lot in my 40 years of my military career, but for the queen to come in the carpet... She stood in front of me quite calmly, as if it was the most normal way to enter the room, and she started talking, in Latin, without an accent. I think I fell in love with about the third word.
Caesar was 52 years old. I'm 21. He was the most influential person in the Western world. I was a fugitive queen with a small army and big plans. We had something to talk about. We talked all night. About politics, about Egypt, about Rome. By morning, we had an alliance. By next year, a son. He was called Caesarion, Little Caesar.
With the help of Caesar, Cleopatra regained the throne. Her brother Ptolemy XIII tried to resist and drowned in the Nile during the escape. Convenient. Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt again. Caesar was killed in 44 BC. Conspirators in the Senate. 23 stabs. Cleopatra was in Rome at that time and quickly returned to Alexandria. The ally is gone. I needed a new one. A few years later, Mark Antony, one of the most powerful people in Rome after Caesar's death, became such an ally. He called Cleopatra to a meeting in Tarsus. Called, as if he's in charge here. Cleopatra accepted the invitation, and she came as she thought was necessary.
I arrived on a gold barge, huge, with purple sails soaked in perfume. The oars were silver and moved to the bed of the music. I was carried on the stern elevation as the goddess Isis, in Isis costume, with appropriate attributes. There are girls around in the images of nymphs and graces. The servants waved me with huge fans of peacock feathers. Crowds of people gathered on the banks of both banks of the river just to look. Antony was waiting for me in the market square, alone, because all his people also went to look at the barge.
I invited her to dinner, to discuss cases, politics, unions. She replied that I'd rather come to her place for dinner. I'm here. There were 12 tables, thousands of candles, beds made of pink petals elbow deep. I came to discuss politics. I stayed for 3 days, then for 3 months, then forever.
The alliance with Antony gave Cleopatra what she needed: military protection, political cover, and control over the Middle Eastern territories. The union gave Antony Egyptian money and an army, and, apparently, he was not against additional bonuses at all. Among the many stories related to Cleopatra, there is one that the ancient authors retold with special pleasure, a story about a pearl. It is told by Pliny the Elder in his Natural History, and it sounds something like this.
Antony liked to brag. A good feature for the military. The bad one is at the table. Once he said that I would not be able to arrange a dinner worth 10 million sesterces. One meal, 10 million. He thought it was impossible. I promised that I could. The next evening we sat down at the table. The dinner was luxurious, but clearly not worth 10 million. Antony has already triumphed. And then I took the earring off my ear.
It was one of the biggest pearls in the world. I was told about it. It cost a fortune. I saw her taking a cup of vinegar. I saw her dipping pearls into the vinegar. The pearls began to dissolve. I tried to stop her. She looked at me so calmly, and I drank.
Pearls dissolve in acid. This is basic chemistry. Acid, vinegar, one sip. The dinner cost 10 million sesterces. I won the argument. Antony sat with his mouth open. That's normal, isn't it? By the way, I could have drunk the second earring then. I had a pair, but I decided to leave it. Antony has already understood everything you need. Here's this bottle. I'll show it to you now because by the end of the story, it will appear again. And then everything will fall into place. For now, just remember, I've been studying poisons for many years. Not out of curiosity, from pragmatism. In a world where they are constantly trying to kill you, and they tried to kill me regularly, it's better to understand in advance what options you have.
Ancient sources, in particular Plutarch and Suetonius, report that Cleopatra really studied toxicology systematically. She experimented with various poisons on prisoners sentenced to death, observed the speed of action, symptoms, degree of pain. She was interested in a specific question: which method of death is the fastest and least painful? Spoiler, she found the answer.
Sounds gloomy. Maybe, but I was the ruler of a country with a population of several million people, surrounded by enemies from all sides. In an era when poisoning was a standard political tool, it's better to know in advance. And then, the same work that I did in the laboratory formed the basis of some of my medical treatises. Yes, I wrote medical treatises, in gynecology and cosmetology. They were quoted a few centuries after my death. Just like that, for reference.
Cleopatra's laboratory, according to descriptions, was full of hundreds of bottles, multicolored liquids, powders, tinctures. In the cages along the walls, there are animals for experiments: ibis, crocodiles, snakes. The young assistant who served her in these experiments, according to testimony, constantly looked like she was going to faint. It's hard to condemn him.
Aconite venom works quickly, but very painfully. Convulsions. Cicuta is slower. Belladonna, hallucinations before death, which some consider humane, but I regard it as an additional horror. Arsenic is a classic, but the agony is stretched. A snake bite, a bite of a certain snake, is another conversation. Quickly, quite painless. And symbolically, if you like, for the Queen of Egypt, the snake has a completely different meaning than for any other person. I'll tell you more about it.
But not about that yet. While Cleopatra is at the top, the union with Antony is strong. Egypt is getting richer. The territories are expanding. She has 3 children from Antony. Everything seems to have settled down. It seems. In Rome, meanwhile, Octavian, Caesar's nephew and heir, gained strength. Antony and Octavian shared power over the empire and hated each other more and more. Octavian skillfully used Antony's alliance with Cleopatra for propaganda purposes. He represented Antony as a traitor to Roman values, a puppet in the hands of the Eastern Queen. In 31 BC, a decisive naval battle took place at Cape Actium. Rome against Egypt, Octavian against Antony and Cleopatra.
We lost. I won't pretend otherwise. The Battle of Action was a disaster. My fleet has retreated. Antony, seeing that I was leaving, gave up his command and followed me. His men thought he had escaped from the battlefield. The army surrendered. Octavian was going to Alexandria.
Cleopatra stood on the balcony of the palace and looked at the sea. The lights of the Roman fleet were already visible in the distance. She knew what this approach meant. Octavian won't kill her. It would be too easy. He will lead her in chains through the streets of Rome, in a triumphal procession. It's the main trophy for him. A queen chained in gold chains, a symbol of victory over the East. Public humiliation for the fun of the crowd.
That's not it. That's the only thing I won't allow. You can lose the army. You can lose the fleet. You can lose the country. You can't let the enemy make a trophy out of you. I am the Queen of Egypt, the last pharaoh of the great civilization. I will die as a queen, not as a prisoner.
First, Antony died. Having received false news of Cleopatra's death, he struck himself with a sword. The wound was not immediately fatal. It was brought to Cleopatra. He died in her arms. Cleopatra was in confinement in the palace. Octavian kept her in custody, preparing a triumphal procession. She asked for permission to perform funeral rites according to Antony. She was allowed. During the ceremony, a basket of fruit was delivered to her. Or, according to some versions, it was a basket with flowers. A snake was hidden inside.
Egyptian cobra, aspid, Uri. This is the symbol that decorates the diadem of the pharaohs. The same snake on my crown. I studied poisons. I knew it was fast. I knew it didn't hurt, not like other methods. And I knew something else. According to Egyptian beliefs, the bite of a sacred snake gives immortality. The man who was bitten by the aspid is accepted by the gods as their own. I was the daughter of the goddess Isis. It seemed right to me to leave like this.
When the god entered the cells, Cleopatra was lying on a golden bed in full royal dress, dead. Next to her are two maids, also dead. There were almost no small marks from the bite. Octavian, according to the evidence, was furious. He planned a triumph. He got an empty throne. She was 39 years old.
For 2,000 years, I've been portrayed in different ways. Sometimes as a femme fatale, a woman who seduced great men and destroyed empires. Sometimes as a victim, beautiful but helpless. Both versions are lies. Caesar and Antony were my allies, not my masters. I chose them in the same way as they chose political partners, based on the interests of my country. Egypt prospered for 20 years under me. It's a long time for that era.
What did Cleopatra leave behind? Egypt, which she defended for 20 years from absorption by Rome, although, in the end, Rome still won. Medical treatises that were read for several centuries, diplomatic precedents that historians study, and a legend, so powerful that for 2,000 years it could neither be silenced nor simplified to one thing.
Do you know what annoys me the most about the way I'm remembered? Not that they forgot about languages. It's not that they forgot about science. And the fact that every time someone talks about me, he first of all mentions the men next to me, Caesar, Antonia, as if I existed only in the context of their stories. I rule Egypt, myself. They weren't there at that time.
Cleopatra VII Philopator is the last independent ruler of Egypt. After her death, the country became a Roman province and remained so for the next 7 centuries. No one else has ever ruled Egypt like a pharaoh. She was the last one. And she knew about it. Perhaps it was this knowledge that gave her that special mixture of dignity and despair that is read in every story about her last years.
Oh yes, pumpkin with wasps. I promised to explain. It was not exactly my idea. I found a description in one ancient text. The point is that the wasps inside the confined space vibrate in a certain way. It doesn't hurt, Rather intensely. I was a curious person. I always tested hypotheses in practice. That was the scientific method I had. Don't judge. You'd better subscribe.
It was dead honest. If you are interested in people who change the world, not always in convenient ways, subscribe to the channel. The next issue will be no less strange. We promise.